Hello and welcome dear students. Today we are going to discuss about the topic biological and cultural evolution of humans. The main objectives of today's lecture are to know the basics of biological and cultural evolution, to discuss about the biological basis of origin of culture, to discuss about the principle of variation in cultural evolution, to discuss about the principle of inheritance in cultural evolution, to discuss about the cultural and biological factors of human evolution, and finally to discuss about the prime differences between biological and cultural evolution. Dear students, let's first start with the introduction. Biological evolution is a population level process guided in large part by selection and in small populations also by random processes. In the biological world, there are two types of selection targeted at individuals and based on differences in their genes. These types of selection are natural selection described by Charles Darwin in 1859 and sexual selection also described by Darwin. In the theory of evolution, the concept of fitness is central. Fitness is the relative capacity of the individual to produce fertile offsprings or to have its genes represented in the gene pool of the next generation. In general, fitness is constituted of two components, the survival component and the reproduction component. To be fit, an organism must survive until reproductive age and then reproduce. In addition to this, many animals, notably several birds and all mammals, including man, possess a third component of fitness which may be called a fostering or nursing component. By this, it is meant that these animals, to be fit, must foster their offsprings until they reach reproductive age. Culture, on the other hand, can be defined as the wholeness of the mental and material achievements of a society or mankind as a whole. The influential American anthropologist Adamson Hobel describes culture as an integrated system of learned behavior patterns that are characteristic of members of a society and are not a result of biological inheritance, to which, however, it must be added that according to the modern view, genes and learning are not independent elements as culture factors. Cultural evolution provides an explanation for how cultures and societies change over time. Whereas culture development relies upon processes that tend to increase complexity of a society or culture, cultural evolution also covers processes that can lead to a decrease in complexity of culture or that can produce variation or proliferation without any seemingly significant change in the complexity. Cultural evolution can be defined as the process by which structural reorganization is effected through time, eventually producing a form or structure which is qualitatively different from the ancestral form. In biological evolution, however, two processes that act on different levels can be distinguished. One is the microevolution and another is the macroevolution. It seems that a parallel can be drawn from cultural evolution to biological microevolution, though less so to biological macroevolution. It also seems that researchers of the topic are rather united regarding the hypothesis that cultural evolution in general mainly obeys the same regularities as biological evolution, although considerable differences exist there. Dear students, let us now discuss the incorporation of biology and culture. Using the language analogy of theoretical biology first presented by the Scottish developmental biologist Conrad H. Waddington in 1972, the American epidemiologist Roderick Wells and his compatriot Phylogeographer Robert G. Wells have proposed that the joint evolution of human biology and culture rests on the merging together of the genetic language and the cultural language, the language being understood in the broadest sense of the word. Subsequent to this incorporation, it became possible for human societies to be homes for specializations and assimilations that are characteristic only of culture. In this way, morality, religions, art, science, political and economic systems, and the entirety of human culture in all its richness have emerged. Dear students, let's now discuss the biological basis of origin of culture. Implications of environmental factors in evolution of human culture. Before dealing with genetic evolution of culture, it is necessary to briefly discuss the significance of ecological and other environmental circumstances for origin and development of human culture. It's almost self-evident that a supply of fresh water and food and consequently suitable ecological and climatic conditions for food production and yield of water were necessary for the birth and development of human culture. It's also clear that supply of raw materials for building houses and other dwellings as well as for making different tools and other necessities is significant for human culture. These conditions for culture have led to two facts. Firstly, that mankind has been able to inhabit, practically speaking, all areas on the continents and islands on earth that are free of glaciers, and secondly, that the distribution of our species is limited to these areas. Dear students, let's now have an overview of cultural evolution. Cultural evolution or the development of cultures can be defined as the change of the behavior of individuals through learning in an individual from another. In this case, selection is targeted at any behavioral characteristics. In humans, cultural selection is at least partly based on conscious action. In cultural evolution, selection is not at least directly targeted at the genetic information included in the DNA, but at that information that is produced by the human species itself, which can be material or immaterial. It seems that cultural evolution is Darwinian in the sense that its necessary conditions are the principles of variation, inheritance, and selection. In the cultural form of evolution, however, these principles occur in far more complex forms than in the biological. In addition, these are not the only necessary conditions for cultural evolution, since the sufficient conditions for cultural evolution include several other necessary conditions, all of which are probably not even known yet. The concept of fitness, so central in biological evolution, seems not to apply as such to cultural evolution, and further, the levels of selection in cultural evolution are far more complex than in biological evolution. Dear students, let's now discuss about conditions for evolution of culture. As in biological evolution, the necessary conditions for development of culture include variation, inheritance, and selection. In addition to these, the necessary conditions for cultural evolution are at least storage, collection and accumulation of information, formation of social groups, work and division of labor between individuals, the subsequent development of society, and spoken language. Regarding the conditions for culture, it is necessary to distinguish between animal social systems and human culture, because at these conditions can also be observed in many animal societies. Spoken language, however, is a clear exception. The partial similarity of animal social systems and human culture, on the other hand, indicates that development of human culture is associated with our biological evolution and origin. In addition, there are most likely yet other necessary conditions for development of human culture. the discovery of all necessary conditions for culture evolution naturally is very important for formulation of a theory of cultural evolution. Dear students, let's now discuss about the principle of variation in cultural evolution. Variation is a necessary condition for all selection based evolution because nothing can be selected from homogeneous material. In biological evolution, the sources of variation are the phenomena of mutation and genetic recombination during crossovers. The sources of variation in the realm of cultural evolution are also rather easy to identify. In short, they are firstly innovations and discoveries, and secondly construction and composition. These can be seen as the counterparts of mutation and genetic recombination respectively in biological evolution. Dear students, let's have a look at the principle of inheritance in cultural evolution. Since both biological and cultural evolution require transfer of information, the principle of inheritance is a necessary condition for both types of evolution. In cultural evolution, inheritance is a sequence of events in which information is transferred from one individual to another with the aid of social learning mechanisms. These are imitation, learning, and language. In contrast to biological evolution, in which the transfer of information in the context of inheritance is based on genes and is in man unidirectional and vertical. The mechanism of inheritance in cultural evolution is firstly social, conceptual, and mental, and secondly bidirectional, vertically, horizontally, and obliquely, in other words, network-like. Further information transfer in cultural evolution can often be indirect, mediated from key individuals in the social group, or frequency dependent, derived from individuals representing the majority in the group. In addition, also in contrast to biological evolution, acquired characteristics are heritable in cultural evolution. Further, while in biological evolution genetic information is received only once during an organism's lifetime at conception, information in cultural evolution is received throughout the life. Thirdly, information in biological evolution proceeds slowly and only via generational change, whereas in cultural evolution information can move very rapidly. Consequently, cultural evolution is far more rapid than biological evolution. Fourthly, in biological evolution, an individual cannot have any influence on the content of genetic information he or she receives. But in cultural evolution, the individuals can choose the information that they accept. Thus, there are significant differences between biological and cultural evolution in the realization of the principle of inheritance. This is sufficient reason to see biological and cultural evolution as partly separate phenomena, even though they are tightly intertwined. Dear students, let's now talk about cultural and biological factors of human evolution. Evolution is the gradual development of organism over time. Cultural and biological factors play a significant role in human evolution. Over successive generations, heritable traits in the biological population change due to evolution. Here comes the meaning of cultural and biological evolution. Biology and culture develop side by side in human evolution. Biology makes culture possible, and culture then influences the direction of evolution. This concept helps us understand the significant and distinctive ideas of human evolution. Biological and cultural factors included in human evolution are the reason why it is called the biocultural evolution. Dear students, let's talk about the cultural factors in human evolution. A cultural change characterizes each biological change in human evolution. The cerebral cortex of the brain helps in thinking and communication. So changes in these parts affect the community and cultural life. For example, food gathering helped in the development of the frontal lobe. This part of the brain is responsible for problem solving and motor control. Tool making and technology. Tool making is also a key area with cultural and biological change in humans. The start of the cultural revolution enabled human beings to make tools and design them specifically. Followed by this was hunting and gathering of food. These activities engage different brain parts. The occipital lobe involves sight and perception required for sharp hunting, and the erect structure and bipedalism accomplished the use of tools and their making. Another one is the family and community building. If we take the example of the reproductive system, the enlarged brain of humans resulted in widening of the hip region and the enlargement of the pubic region. Thus, the gestation period becomes longer. The prolonged infant parent dependency helps in improving the bond between parent and child, leading to the strengthening of familial bonds and thus forming communities. Another aspect is linguistic and symbolic skills. The linguistic ability in humans is mainly characterized by the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe. The development of language is why these brain parts show significant evolutionary change. Symbolic measures and communication skills stemmed from the development of these areas. This cultural evolution helps from communities and the origin of civilizations. The biological and cultural change in human evolution are thus interlinked to a certain level. Cultural development was faster and steady compared to biological change. The major differences in cultural and biological change in human evolution involve genetic material. But the co-evolution of humans in such a way has qualified us to live a better and more adaptable life. Culture can thus have a substantial impact on gene frequencies, sometimes increasing and sometimes decreasing the rate of evolution. Dear students, let's now discuss about the connection of biological and cultural factors. The biological factors of human evolution are noted by the journey from hominid to hominoid. The journey is complex and includes structural, behavioral, biological, and cultural change. The prominent biological factors include bipedalism and erect posture. Over time, our ancestors became bipedal, which means that we started walking using two legs. Their postures become upright as a result of the enlarging of the vertebra. The pelvic region becomes short and girdle. Convergent big toes and the platform feet helped them to walk by feet. The backward curving of the spine helped adjust the body weight in the pelvic area by increasing the number of sacrum bones. The flattening of ischium aids in the sitting position, which allowed the ancestors to be better hunters and gatherers. Dear students, expansion and development of brain. An evolutionary process helped the adaptive pressure shorten the brain size beyond a certain limit. Still, a steady increase was seen in the size of human brains since our ancestors. Australopithecus. The small and shortened size of the brain creates space for cranial expansion. This change happened because of the development of new cells as they started thinking and using language. The development of tools and stone weapons helped accelerate this process. The brain capacity of Australopithecus was just 450 cc compared to the 1400 cc of modern day man, that is Homo sapiens sapiens. This change took place right after bipedalism. Another aspect is the remodeling of face and teeth. The jaw and teeth became smaller, the forehead became vertical, and the nose protruded outside. The size of canines and incisors became reduced as the mastication requirement changed over time. the palate becomes shortened. The drastic change in teeth directly affect the digestive system, as now humans beings can be omnivores. The foramen magnum is now located at the center of the skull's base, with the head balancing nicely on the vertebral column. Another aspect is the prime differences between biological and cultural evolution. There are clear differences between biological and cultural evolution. Biological evolution is slow, whereas cultural evolution is rapid and accelerating. With regard to origin of new forms, cultural evolution is even more fruitful than biological evolution, especially when it comes to creative action and brilliance of individuals. The idea that biological evolution is preserving and conservative is also very firmly established. Gene frequencies of populations usually remain the same, assuming that the ecological conditions do not change. Cultural evolution, in contrast, is cumulative because it is based on the creative action of people and because it involves collection and storage of information. As recently emphasized by Castro and Toro, teaching as an accumulative mechanism of cultural inheritance in its essence, most likely absent in non-human primates, has played a significant role in our cumulative cultural evolution. As cultural traits become more complex, cumulative cultural transmission requires incremental teaching to ensure accurate transmission from one generation to the next. The idea that biological evolution is not directed, whereas cultural evolution at least can be oriented and at its best conceived, is also widely accepted. It is also known that biological evolution is irreversible and non-repetitive. Simply put, natural selection cannot run in counter flow, and for example, an extinct species never returns. In contrast, however, cultural evolution can, as is well known, be partly reversible and repetitive, as many examples in the history of mankind, for instance, the Renaissance, illustrate. Further, it is well known that biological evolution is purposeless and opportunistic as well as without direction. On the other side, evolution of culture, however, is purposeful because it depends on the intentions of human individuals and societies. Consequently, it follows that cultural evolution in principle is goal-oriented. Both biological and cultural evolution create order, each in its own realm. In other words, they resist growth of entropy or disorder. This can happen because both are open systems. However, the resistance to growth of entropy or disorder occurs in different ways in these two forms of evolution. The openness of the biosphere of the earth rests on the energy from the sun or some other source, such as the energy derived from hot springs located at the bottom of the oceans. The evolution of culture, in contrast, receives its energy from the labor of human beings and rests on the collection and storage of information in human brains or stocks outside these brains. Dear students, let's now conclude the lecture. Biological evolution is the change in the gene pool, which includes the geographic distribution of genes in partially or completely isolated populations, while as cultural evolution is the change in our culture, which includes change in language and technology. All these changes have collectively influenced our evolutionary patterns. Cultural factors are thus bent so that they can influence and pressure the cultural life of humans. These principles occur in the cultural form of evolution in more complex forms than biological ones. The biological and cultural factors in human evolution, meaning coevolution, help better the species as a whole and are closely related to the Darwinian theories of evolution. Today, cultural evolution has become the basis for a growing field of scientific research in social sciences, including anthropology, economics, psychology, and organizational studies. Previously, it was believed that social change result from biological adaptations, but anthropologists now commonly accept that social change arise in consequence of a combination of social, evolutionary, and biological influences. Deeper analysis of how human culture, human ecology, and the human environment co-evolve is necessary for understanding historical and present dynamics and for predicting future trends. These analyses will provide much needed tools for the planning and direction of such dynamics. Dear students, it was all about today's lecture regarding biological and cultural evolution of humans. Hope you have understood it well. See you next time with a new topic. Till then, take care and goodbye.